For much of Scandinavian history, a volatile balance of power was held by four key players: Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and the ever-present shadow of Russia. Yet, only one of these nations managed to forge a true empire, gripping the entire region in an iron fist for nearly a century. This sparks a critical question. How did Sweden consolidate such absolute power and triumph over its neighbors, especially Denmark, which once held a loose suzerainty over Sweden, Norway, and parts of Finland? To understand Sweden's meteoric rise, we must return to the late 14th century. At the time, Sweden and Norway were trapped under Danish rule within the Kalmar Union. It took over 100 years of struggle before King Gustav Adolphus finally shattered those chains in 1523. Just 3 years later, Gustav I embraced Protestantism, not out of a desire for divorce, but out of cold, hard necessity. After a series of exhausting wars against Denmark, the kingdom was drowning in debt. Lutheranism offered a uniquely Viking solution: the mass confiscation of church properties, providing an unprecedented flood of wealth to the crown. But stealing from the church was a finite strategy. To fulfill his grand ambition of dominating the Baltic Rim, Gustav needed a sustainable war machine. The answer lay in the rising merchant class and the strategic capture of Russian ports. By the mid-16th century, however, the Swedish military and its people lacked a unifying vision. They needed a leader who could transform potential into power. That leader was Gustavus Adolphus the Great, the man who single-handedly turned Sweden into a superpower. Born in 1594, Gustavus II Adolphus inherited the throne at just 16. While most teenagers worry about a driver's license, Gustavus inherited 3 active wars against Denmark, Poland, and Russia. His courage was legendary. He led from the front lines, constantly defying death alongside his men. Through sheer discipline and tactical brilliance, he neutralized 2 of those 3 conflicts before plunging Sweden into one of the bloodiest struggles in history: the 30 Years' War. This religious powder keg within the Holy Roman Empire exploded into a total European war in 1630 when Sweden joined the Protestant cause. Sweden's dominance was fueled by Gustavus's revolutionary military innovations. While most European armies were still using rigid squares of pikemen, Gustavus refined the linear tactics pioneered by Maurice of Nassau. He perfected a model so effective it remained virtually unchanged until the French Revolution. He didn't stop there. He overhauled logistics, created the general staff, and professionalized the artillery. These reforms earned him a place in history as one of the greatest generals to ever live, a sentiment later echoed by Napoleon himself. Even after his death at the Battle of Lutzen in 1632, his army remained a juggernaut. By the war's end in 1648, Sweden controlled several German states. However, the empire soon faced a crisis of leadership under the incompetent reigns of Christina and Charles X Gustav. Despite their failures, the military remained lethal, securing victories against Poland, Denmark, and Russia through the 1650s. But as the 18th century loomed, the Swedish advantage evaporated as rival nations began adopting their very tactics. Under Charles XI, the focus shifted inward. He transformed the government from a semi-parliamentary state into a near-absolute monarchy, streamlining the budget to fund future conquests. He died at 41, leaving the crown to his 15-year-old son, Charles XII. It was a turning point from which Sweden would never recover. In 1700, Russia and Poland sensed weakness and declared war, sparking the Great Northern War. Despite early successes, the tide turned at the disastrous Battle of Poltava, where the Swedish army was decimated. Charles XII was eventually killed in 1718 while fighting the Danes. By 1721, the Swedish Empire was dead. Sweden surrendered Ingria, Estonia, and Livonia to the Russians, and various territories to the Danes. While Sweden remained a player in European politics through the 19th century, it was a minor one, relegated to the sidelines by repeated defeats. Following the Napoleonic Wars, Sweden adopted a policy of strict neutrality, a stance that would define the nation through both world wars and into the modern era.